There's a peculiar kind of pain that comes from being the forgotten child, the one who exists in the shadow of someone else's brilliance. For years, I carried that weight silently, watching as my family poured their love, attention, and resources into my younger sister, Eliza. She was the golden girl, beautiful, talented, and effortlessly charming. And me, I was the steady one, the dependable son who never caused trouble, but also never seemed to shine brightly enough to earn their admiration. But now, sitting across from her in a dimly lit diner, listening to her plead for help, I couldn't help but feel a bitter irony rising in my chest. The same family that had favored her for decades was now turning to me to clean up the mess she'd made. It wasn't always like this. Growing up, our household buzzed with energy, laughter, and an unspoken hierarchy where Eliza reigned supreme. My parents doted on her, praising every accomplishment as though it were a miracle while barely noticing mine. When she won a school talent show at 12, they threw a party so extravagant it felt like she'd just released a platinum album. Meanwhile, when I graduated top of my class in high school, they gave me a pat on the back and muttered something about how proud they were before rushing off to attend one of Eliza's dance recitals. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. I convinced myself that fairness wasn't the point, that families aren't obligated to divide their affection equally. Besides, I had bigger dreams than competing for their approval. While Eliza chased spotlights and applause, I focused on building a life that didn't rely on anyone else's validation. I worked hard, saved diligently, and carved out a modest but stable existence for myself. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. But then came the cracks, the moments when favoritism stopped being harmless and started becoming destructive. When Eliza decided to drop out of college to pursue a modeling career, my parents handed over their savings without hesitation, assuring her that failure was just part of the journey. When I asked for help paying off student loans, they shrugged and said, "You'll figure it out." When her business ventures failed one after another, they bailed her out each time, treating her mistakes as temporary setbacks rather than lessons learned. And through it all, I stood on the sidelines, quietly resentful but too stubborn to say anything. Years passed, and the distance between us grew wider, not just between Eliza and me, but between me and the rest of the family. I stopped attending holiday gatherings, tired of hearing about Eliza's latest big break, or how proud everyone was of her resilience. They didn't see what I saw, a pattern of recklessness disguised as ambition, a cycle of dependency masked by charisma. Still, I kept my thoughts to myself, retreating further into my own world until I became little more than a footnote in their lives. Then, last month, I received a call from my mother, a rare occurrence given how little we spoke these days. Her voice trembled as she explained that Eliza was in trouble. Again. This time, it was worse than usual. She had racked up thousands in debt, defaulted on loans, and alienated most of her friends in the process. "We've done everything we can," my mother admitted, her tone heavy with guilt. "But there's nothing left. We thought maybe you could step in." The audacity of the request hit me like a punch to the gut. After years of neglecting me, sidelining me, and prioritizing her needs above mine, they expected me to swoop in and save the day. Did they really think I owed her anything after everything they'd put me through? I wanted to say no. God knows I did, but curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I agreed to meet Eliza for coffee. She looked different when she walked into the diner, smaller, more fragile. Gone was the confident woman who had once strutted through life as if the universe revolved around her. In her place was someone burdened by regret, her eyes hollow and her hands trembling as she clutched her mug. "I know I don't deserve your help," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "After everything I've done, or haven't done, I wouldn't blame you if you walked away right now. But I'm scared, Leo. Really scared, and I don't know who else to turn to." Her vulnerability caught me off guard. For so long, I had seen Eliza as untouchable, immune to the consequences of her actions. Seeing her stripped of that armor forced me to confront emotions I'd buried long ago. Anger, sadness, and yes, even pity. But sympathy wasn't the same as forgiveness, and I wasn't ready to let go of the resentment that had festered inside me for years. Instead of answering her plea directly, I leaned back in my chair and studied her carefully. "Do you remember when you bought that designer handbag instead of helping Mom pay her medical bills?" I asked, my tone deliberately casual. "Or when Dad co-signed a loan for your boutique, only for you to close it 6 months later without paying him back. Eliza flinched, tears welling in her eyes. I know I messed up, she whispered. I thought I could handle things on my own, but I was wrong. I was arrogant and selfish, and I hurt people, especially you. Her admission surprised me. I had expected excuses, deflection, maybe even denial, but here she was, owning up to her mistakes in a way I hadn't anticipated. It didn't erase the past, but it softened the edges of my anger just enough to make room for doubt. Could she really change? Or was this just another act designed to manipulate me into giving her what she wanted? Over the next few weeks, I wrestled with the decision. On one hand, helping her felt like rewarding bad behavior, like letting her off the hook for years of reckless decisions. On the other hand, refusing to help would mean cutting ties completely, and despite everything, I wasn't sure I was ready to do that. So I compromised. I offered to assist her, but only under strict conditions. When we met again, I handed her an envelope containing half the amount she needed. This is all you're getting from me, I told her firmly. The rest you'll have to figure out yourself. And if you want to earn my trust, you're going to start making real changes. She nodded, clutching the envelope tightly. Thank you, she said softly. I won't let you down. To my surprise, she kept her word. Over the following months, Eliza took on odd jobs, sold unnecessary belongings, and even reached out to old acquaintances to repair broken relationships. It wasn't easy for her. I could see the toll it took, but she stuck with it, determined to prove she was serious about changing. Slowly, painfully, trust began to form again. As for my parents, our relationship remained complicated. They apologized repeatedly, but the scars of their betrayal lingered. Still, we found ways to reconnect, sharing quiet moments that reminded me of happier times. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Looking back now, I realize that forgiveness isn't about forgetting or excusing the past. It's about choosing to move forward, even when it's hard. Eliza's betrayal taught me resilience, self-reliance, and the importance of setting boundaries. But it also reminded me that people can change, if they're willing to put in the work. Life doesn't offer neat endings, no matter how much we crave them. Some wounds may never fully heal, and some relationships may never return to what they once were. But amidst the chaos and pain, there's always a chance for redemption if we're willing to fight for it. In the end, Eliza didn't just take from me, she gave me an opportunity to rediscover my strength. And while I'll never forget what she did, I've learned that love, even flawed, complicated love, is worth fighting for.